Wow. Y'all gonna make me go after that? He just sang, dropped the mic, and left. I ain't mad at him. Get that young man another round of applause, please. And what a powerful message. He raised me up to more than I could be. That is indeed what we need to be thinking about this morning as we reflect on this idea of empowerment. How can we be lifted up to be more than we otherwise could be? We give thanks to God for the opportunity to be here and to think together, and I give thanks to all of you all for spending some time of your morning with me. And once again, I want to thank these young people for being here. There's so often when we turn on the television, we hear these stories about our children that don't always connect to the children we see in our houses. On TV, they're troublesome and they're dangerous and they're violent. They're problems. And we look in our own homes, we look at our babies in the eyes, and we see beautiful, bright minds and strong voices. We see the next doctors and lawyers and teachers and leaders and parents. And I want to make sure that we never lose sight of the fact that these young people have possibilities that the world hasn't even considered yet. That's why it's so important for places like Zion to exist. I remember coming to Zion when my father's a member of Zion. He's been a member. Y'all don't know him because he ain't been here in about 40 years. Y'all laughing, but he tithes about as much as some of y'all. And I was taught to come here, and I went here for daycare, and I went here for pre-K. I even went here for kindergarten. And so much of what Zion represented to me was a space where young people could be who they are, be who they wanted to be, where they could grow and where there would be adults to nurture them and develop them. Zion was a special place. The great Leon Sullivan was here, and I have the pleasure of serving on the Sullivan Foundation board now. And when Reverend Sullivan, Pastor Sullivan was here, he had a vision that Zion was going to be more than just a Sunday church. That Zion would be bigger than just what we did today, that we would leave the church on Sunday feeling good, but we would hit the ground on Monday committed to working, committed to changing the world. That Zion would be the centerpiece of what a church could be, but what a community center could be, what a political center could be, what a social center could be. Leon Sullivan had a vision for what Zion could be, and Zion fulfilled that vision every single day. And so it is exciting to see Pastor Prince here committed to reviving that. Zion is back. Zion is back on the map again. Zion has recommitted itself. You all have recommitted yourselves to changing the world, to enacting a social gospel. To saying that I'm not just committed to feeling good and having my own individual prosperity, but I'm also committed to taking care of the least of these. That I'm also worried about the man who was falling on Jericho Road. That my fundamental preoccupation as a Christian, as a human being, is not what's in it for me, but what's in it for us. Now, I know we ain't got much time, and I'm not a preacher by any stretch of the imagination. We'll leave that to 11 o'clock, but while I'm here, I did want to share just a few words with you all about what might be possible moving forward. What might be possible moving forward, because we've had a rough month, y'all. This has been a rough month. Many of us went into July with hope and optimism. We're feeling good about the economy a little bit. We're feeling good about the summertime. We were feeling good about the possibility of justice for a little boy named Trayvon. And we invested our hopes in the criminal justice system, and not for the first time, we walked out of that trial, we walked out of that ordeal feeling hurt, feeling surprised, feeling pain. How could we not feel pain for this little boy who was killed? And we know who did it. And we saw what happened. And we had a trial. And they made a determination that this man, George Zimmerman, was not guilty of murder or even manslaughter. He went home to collect the gun that was used to kill our son. What do we do with that? how do we reconcile that level of injustice with our sustained faith in God? How do we continue to believe and hope and dream and fight in the midst of all of this injustice? How do we deal with the loss of Trayvon? How do we deal with the loss of this trial? How do we make sense of it and make the world better? Pastor didn't bring us here to mourn. He brought us here to think about empowerment. What can we do tomorrow? And I want us to think about a few tomorrows from now, because there are some really interesting tomorrows coming up. August 28th is coming up. It'll be the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. And so in a little bit of time that I have here, I want us to reflect. Again, the preaching is going to happen at 11 o'clock. I want you all to think about justice for a minute. This August 28th is going to happen, and we're going to be reflecting, but one of the challenges of America is that they want us to remember certain things and not others. America wants us to rummage through our minds at times and retrieve the best memories, and at other times they want us to discard and dismiss the most painful memories. They don't want us to hold on to certain truths that might make us different and better. And so when we think about August 28th, 1963, when Dr. King stood up there at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, we feel good. And we might even feel good about that because it connects to another August 28th. Some of y'all remember this. August 28th, 2008. Barack Obama walked into the Denver Coliseum and he accepted the nomination of the Democratic Party for president. That August 28th felt good, didn't it? Of course it did, because we had a sense of hope and possibility for who and what America could be. And so we connected the night, August 28, 1963, when Dr. King had a dream, to August 28, 2008, when Barack Obama begins to fulfill that dream. And we as black folk felt good about that, and we should, because we've had a long journey. Long before Barack Obama walked up those steps, we had a journey of freedom fighters. We had a journey of grandmamas and great-grandmamas and great-great-grandmamas that fought for slavery. We had a nation of people who fought through segregated lunch counters and barking dogs and segregated schools. We were taught that we couldn't eat. Our money was counterfeit. We couldn't buy a hamburger. We couldn't take a picture in front of the Washington Monument, but dogs could. It was a different world. And so when Barack Obama walks up there in 2008 and accepts the nomination on August 28th, it felt good. It felt like we lived in a nation that didn't just grow old, but also grows up. And yet here we are, trying to make sense of that hope against the backdrop of Trayvon, which left many of us feeling hopeless. The scripture tells us to not destroy the ancient landmarks. What does that mean? It means that we can't stop rummaging through history. We can't stop digging. We can't stop trying to locate our past. That means that we can feel good about August 28, 2008. We can remember August 28, 1963, but we have to start somewhere else. We have to start with August 28, 1955, when Emmett Till is murdered. Because that's a different kind of memory. You see, empowerment doesn't just start now. To empower the world, we have to make sense of our past lest we repeat it. So for me, it's August 28, 1955 that becomes so important at this moment, when a little black boy named Emmett Till was walking up the street, very similar to Trayvon, committing the same crime, young, black, and outside. You see, we've created a world that criminalizes young people. It's illegal to be outside after 10 o'clock. They stop and they frisk you, even though 99% of the times they stop and frisk you, they don't find guns or drugs. They stop you on the highway, even though white folk are statistically more likely to have guns and drugs in the car. Black folk get pulled over more. We've made it illegal to be young and black and outside. Emmett Till committed that crime in 1955. He was young and black and he was outside, and yet because they alleged that he whistled at a white woman, we later found out that he didn't, but even if he had, it certainly didn't make him death eligible. And yet when you're young and black and male, we are considered to be so violent, so dangerous, such an interruption to democracy that our very presence demands not just incarceration, but lethal force. And so when they dragged him and they beat him and they blew his face up 5 times, 10 times the normal size, when the state couldn't give justice to them, that's when black folk first really understood what terrorism meant. See, the world is up in arms over terrorism from another date, September 11th, but the real terrorism for black folk didn't start on September 11th. We've been facing terrorism since the Ku Klux Klan was invented. We've been facing terrorism since the police began to terrorize our neighborhoods. We've always wrestled with terrorism, and interestingly enough, black folk have always responded to terrorism differently than the rest of America. Imagine if we rioted every time there was terrorism. Imagine if we rioted every time there was injustice. But I'm gonna keep going because I know we ain't got a lot of time. August 28, 1955 was an opportunity for America to grow up. It was an opportunity for America to develop a different vision of itself. It was an opportunity for America to give justice for a little black boy. We didn't get it in 1955. And then we moved to August 28, 1963, family. We celebrate that moment as the moment of I Have a Dream. We celebrate August 28, 1963 as a moment of I Have a Dream, as a moment where Dr. King uttered a vision of what America could look like, where black kids and white kids could sit at the same table in brotherhood, where young people could have black and white friends, where we could have the world just look like a big Gap commercial, big McDonald's commercial, just black and white folks sitting everywhere. But that wasn't Dr. King's vision. You see, when Dr. King stood there in front of the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, excuse me, he was offering a prophetic voice to America, not about dreams, but about promises. That speech isn't an I Have a Dream speech, it's a broken promise speech. Dr. King stood in front of Lincoln. It wasn't a coincidence. He stood in front of Lincoln because Lincoln was supposed to be the great emancipator. He said, 40 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand signed an Emancipation Proclamation. Dr. King knew what he was doing. He was saying, America, you made a promise. He said, we have come to the nation's capital to cash a check. He said the Negro sits in a vast island of poverty amidst an ocean of material wealth and prosperity. America, you made a promise. He said the Emancipation Proclamation, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, he said they were promissory notes. He said it cannot be returned insufficient funds. He said, America, you promised. You see, if we're going to remember truthfully, we can't allow ourselves to be seduced into thinking that this was just about a dream. Dreams don't have budgets attached to them. August 28, 1963 was about what? About America's promise. Dr. King stands there and says, America, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, you promised. Emancipation Proclamation, America, you promised. Declaration of Independence, America, you promised. Brown v. Board, 1955, America, you promised. Public accommodations, 1964, America, you promised. 1965, Voting Rights Act, America, you promised. 2008, election of Barack Obama, America, you made a promise. Our goal as believers, our goal as citizens is to create an America that is as good as its promise. And there are moments where we think we get that promise fulfilled, like August 28, 2008. When Barack Obama gets that nomination, many of us thought that our work was done. We thought that our struggle was finished. We all assembled and we voted on November 4th and made him president. We then went to DC for the inauguration, feeling good. Put on our best clothes. We smiled, we took pictures, we danced at the ball for those that went. We did it again in 2012. We felt it was like a wedding of democracy. It was a beautiful wedding where everybody feels good and smells good and looks good and says the right things. Even people that didn't vote for him was there smiling. But the problem with weddings is not the wedding itself, it's the day after. I don't know about y'all, but I know some people that's real good at weddings and real bad at marriage. The marriage begins the day after. The struggle begins the day after. We as a community have a responsibility Even if George Bush is in office, even if Barack Obama is in office, even if Bill Clinton's in office, I don't care who's in office, our work does not stop. Our work doesn't stop. I voted for the president in 2008, but it didn't stop me from offering a prophetic witness. It didn't stop me from challenging him. It didn't stop me from criticizing him. He is not the Pope. He's not our granddaddy. We as citizens have a duty to challenge him. So let's not think of the election of Barack Obama as an opportunity to stop struggling. It's an opportunity to be a part of the struggle even more. So family, as we commit, and I'm going to leave y'all alone in a minute, as we commit to moving forward, let us remember that no matter who's in office, we have to be a respecter of principles, not persons. Because there's a landscape out here that doesn't care who's president. We got young black men dying every day. Trayvon was an awful tragedy. But there are young black men dying in Chicago every single day. There are young black men here in Philadelphia, my city, dying every single day. I grew up on Luzerne Street, right up the street, 12th and Luzerne. Young people dying. All my friends are dead. I'm not even being dramatic. All of my friends are dead. What do we do about that? Mass incarceration. 1 in 100 Americans is incarcerated. 1 in 3 black men between 20 and 29 incarcerated. Parole, probation. This country locks up more people here than Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, North Korea, China, Venezuela, all put together. We have committed ourselves to first-class jails and second-class schools. We have committed ourselves to a world, hold up family, we have committed ourselves to a world where it is better to be guilty and rich than poor and innocent. Family, this work doesn't stop. Because another August 28th, and now I know it's crazy, but there's so many of them, God has a way of revealing things to us. August 28th, 2005 was what? The height of Katrina. That's the other August 28th they don't want us to remember. A city of people washed away. Their homes gone, their culture gone, their land gone. Suddenly these people were dislocated. Moved from New Orleans to Houston, moved from New Orleans to Georgia. Somebody, George Bush's wife, said it was a good thing for them. But what we learned at that moment was that a group of people, if you are poor in this country, whether you're black, you're white, you're red, you're yellow, if you are poor in this country, you become disposable. We have to change the belief in this country that poor people are disposable, that black people are disposable, that young people are disposable, that women are disposable, that elderly are disposable, because that's what we have right now is a world of disposability, a belief that if you are not rich, that if you are not male, that if you are not white, that you are disposable. Katrina washed away our lands and they rebuilt new homes and an entirely new group of people took over. There's an opportunity here to reflect on history again because the book of Luke teaches us about a moment, a Jubilee year, in fact, where people's homes were lost. An opportunity to reflect on a moment where we could preach good news to the poor, where we could heal the brokenhearted, where we could free the captive, as 1.5 million black men are captive, as people's homes are being taken from them, as people are hurting and brokenhearted from the loss of Trayvon, and even worse, the loss of a child. We can lose a child, but we can never lose our rights. We can lose an election, but we can never lose our votes. This month has tried our patience in the system itself. We are looking for answers. We are trying to make sense of it. But the scripture gives us an opportunity to reflect upon that, to make sense of that, to find some hope at a time where there doesn't seem to be any, because I know this ain't exactly a motivational speech. But I'm a bit sad myself. I'm a bit melancholy myself. And so what I'm trying to do is give you all a sense of what has happened but also give us a sense of what we can do to move forward. I know y'all got to go, but just hear me for a second. Moving forward, we got something to do. The first thing we must do is commit to telling the truth in public. We must commit to telling the truth in public. And that ain't no small feat. It takes more than a notion to tell the truth in public, because the world doesn't want to hear the truth. That's what makes Pastor Prince so special. He's willing to stand in that pulpit and offer prophetic witness every week, even when y'all don't want to hear it. And sometimes y'all don't want to hear it. It takes revolutionary patience to lead a church full of y'all, I'm telling you. And I love you. He ain't gonna tell you, but I'm gonna tell you. Telling the truth in public means even when it is difficult, you are willing to speak truth. Even when it compromises your job, you have to speak truth. Even when it compromises some of this privilege, you have to speak the truth. Even when it puts you in a position that might make you unpopular, speak the truth. I used to work for Fox News for 3 years, and I debate Bill O'Reilly every week. And I'd have days where I'd get 50,000 emails or 10,000 emails, all calling me evil names, bad names. I learned new racial slurs working for Fox News. I was like, oh, they call black people that too? But after a while, I stopped being uneasy then. I started being uneasy when nobody said they disagreed with me. When they started liking me too much, I started to feel uncomfortable. Because there's something about being someone who believes in justice, who believes in democracy, but also believes in a higher power that says that if I'm too popular, if the world loves me too much, I'm probably doing something wrong. So enjoy the margin. Enjoy being in a corner. Enjoy the fact that people look at you a little crazy. Enjoy the fact that sometimes people at your job say, oh, don't talk to him about that because, he's going to start talking about that thing. Take that as a sign that you might be doing something wrong. You might just be crazy. Let's not dismiss that possibility either. But you might be doing something right. Tell the truth in public. But telling the truth in public doesn't mean you just talk to the Republicans or you just talk to the white people or you just talk to the enemy. Talk to yourself. Tell your truth. I was in Cook County Jail about 5 years ago, visiting. You're like, oh Lord, what'd I do? I was with Jesse Jackson, and Reverend Jackson and I were at Cook County Jail on Christmas. We were speaking to prisoners, and we said, how many of you are here for a nonviolent drug offense? Hands go up. How many of you are under 21 or under 25? Hands go up. How many of you finished high school? Almost no hands go up. We understand the relationship between not graduating and mass incarceration. We understand the relationship between being young and black and not literate and going to prison. We understand that Rockefeller drug laws and the war on drugs, which made drugs cheaper, easier to get, and stronger than ever, we didn't win that war, but what we did do was manage to put a bunch of young, black, poor people in prison. We understood all of that. Reverend Jackson said, how many of you all have children? Hands go up. Almost everybody. 2 kids, hands go up. 3 kids, some hands go up. We stopped asking. He said, who wants to shut this prison down? Who wants to shut this prison down? Who wants to shut this prison down today? All the inmates said, yes. What do we do? He said, don't come back no more. Nobody would accuse Jesse Jackson of not thinking about race. Nobody would say Jesse Jackson doesn't understand the systemic issues that we struggle with around mass incarceration, around schools, around mental health. We could go on down the list, but there's also something to be said about me. Telling the truth to me, about saying that there might be drugs in our communities, but we ain't got to sell them, we darn sure ain't got to smoke them. That we might have children that we didn't expect, but we can still raise them, we can still parent them. That we may have laws that don't work, but we can still fight to change them. That the power is not merely up there, and by up there I mean the government. The power is in us, that we can do something, that we have to own our own stuff too. Tell the truth to the world and to yourself. Two more things, and I promise I'm gonna leave you alone. The second thing is, you got to organize, family. I've been organizing my whole life. I've been an activist since I was 6. Sneaking out the house, going to 52nd Street, organizing with the black nationalists and organizing with the this and the that. I ain't gonna tell all of y'all because y'all got cameras on. It's easy to get people to be activists. It's easy to get people to react. It's easy to get people to show up for a rally. As crazy as it sounds, it's even easy to get people to get together and get arrested. But the day after is hard work. Try getting a group of people together to make photocopies, to make phone calls, to do Saturday school, to teach. Organizing means that the day after, I have to commit to a cause, and I gotta commit to that cause even if I'm not in charge of it. Because some of y'all will love to be the chair of the committee, the president of the committee, the leader of the committee, but if you got to be second, if you ain't in charge, some of y'all leave. Some of y'all take y'all ball and go home. I go to college campuses around this country, there'll be 50 black people on campus in 25 organizations. Everybody president and vice president. That ain't about the organization, that's about you. That's about your need to run something, your ability to lead something. Brothers and sisters, we got to stop that mentality. If we're gonna organize, we got to get out the way. That means we have to let these women lead. Because I've been in a whole lot of places where a woman got a PhD and a dude in the front ain't making no sense. And she like, yeah, baby, you got it, you right, you right. We have to change that. Grown folk, elders, we got to let these children on the stage. Some of you all knocked your mothers and fathers off the stage and won't let your sons and daughters on. Some of y'all would rather have an organization die in your arms than to give it to a young person. We got to change that. We have to reimagine that. We have to organize, and finally, family, we have to hope relentlessly. As people of faith, our belief does not rest in the court system, although we appeal to it and need it. Our faith does not rest in the criminal justice system or the police or even the schools. Our faith rests in a God that has sustained us against the odds. You see, if black folk were to rely on the odds, we would never win. There was no evidence that slavery would end. There was no evidence that schools would get integrated. There was no evidence that we'd have a black man in DC right now. There was no evidence of that, and yet we believed audaciously anyway. We've always decided that we would never be prisoner to the moment. Howard Thurman said, never ever scale down your dreams to the level of that which is your immediate experience. What does that mean, Doc? It means you don't have to be prisoner to a moment. You don't have to be prisoner to an incident. You don't have to be prisoner to a not guilty verdict. You don't have to be prisoner to a set of statistics that say that we're going to die, that say we're going to get HIV/AIDS, that say we're going to end up in the state pen, that say that our children aren't going to graduate. We don't have to be prisoner to that moment because we never have. We come from a tradition of people that struggled anyway, of grandmamas and great-grandmamas that worked and walked 12, 15 miles to somebody else's house to clean somebody else's clothes and nurse somebody else's children, to dream a dream bigger than any dream we could dream for ourselves. And they did it because they knew that they wouldn't live to see this moment, but that we would. And that was enough for them. And they didn't cry. They didn't feel ashamed. They didn't get angry or despondent. Like John on the island of Patmos, they didn't ask why I got there. They didn't complain about the isolation. They said, how can I bring down a new heaven and a new earth? How can I create the world that is not yet? And they never stopped being grateful. They never stopped saying thank you. That grandmama dropped to her knees after 18 hours of work and never said, why me? She said, Lord, I just want to thank you that the four corners of my room ain't the four corners to my grave, that my bed sheet ain't my winding sheet, that my bed ain't my cooling board. I'm gonna leave y'all alone, I promise. But they didn't just dream, and they didn't just pray. As the old folks said, they prayed while running. And so as I leave you, I urge you all to pray while running, to keep struggling and fighting for freedom against the odds, against all evidence to the contrary. When they tell you you can't do it, you say we will. Because that's what we've always said. They said slavery wouldn't end, and we ended slavery. They said it couldn't happen, we said it would happen. They said it won't happen, we said it must happen. They said we were going to die, we've managed to live. They saw a slave, we saw a president. They see the state pen, we can see Penn State. They saw a man on the cross, and yet we saw a living God. That's been our tradition, that's been our struggle, and so I urge you all to fight, to struggle, to believe, to love our way through this. And this August 28th, let's create a new history. Let's create a new possibility. Let us create the world that is not yet. Thank you all for your time. God bless you. I love you.